And to help us delve deeper into the second Pyeongyang-Washington summit and the implications of its outcome, we're joined in the studio by Professor Song Se-ryeon from Kyung Hee University. Professor, thank you so much for making time for us today.
Good to be here.
Well, first of all, what is your impression of the outcome of this second summit?
Well, the outcomes, believing that everything has a silver lining. Good thing and bad thing, I guess. Good things is that still there's no testing or there's no brinkmanship from North Korea, so we're relatively going through a peaceful period of law. And both sides, meaning the Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump, want to keep this process going, meaning that they are both willing to get engaged and the further process to see some kind of deal coming. Of course, there are downsides. It's a setback. There's no other way to put it. And if you kind of step away from this big high summit meeting, the reality is that because of the domestic situations that both parties have and all kinds of different variables, we don't know when the next time will come and whether it will come at all, right? So at that standpoint, I guess this is an opportunity lost, and we have to blame both parties not getting really get prepared for making a big deal this time. So I guess there's a good point and bad point, but I remain kind of committed to looking at the good side because nobody said this is going to be a short and a very sweet deal. It was going to be a long-term process because the problem itself is very deep-rooted and big. So I hope that this is part of the process where we clarify more issues and there come to a day, hopefully not so distant future, get everything squared away.
Could it have been different? If so, what would have been the different approach that could have made a difference in this summit?
Well, looking back, actually, there was this kind of a pessimism or a little bit of worry that in this kind of big summit, especially because this is the second time we're doing it, the expectation was that there would have been more working group discussions and a lot of the smaller issues already squared away, and there should have been just an opportunity or photo ops and sign it and shake hands and make a big announcement. But that working group deal has been curiously missing. And we're just hoping this various the personalities to come together and make a big deal right then and there. That expectation probably is not very realistic, no matter how much we think that this dramatic two figures can make things happen because of the unconventional nature.
The fact that these are two very dramatic and unconventional characters, that's why there are higher expectations, perhaps, from the rest of the world.
Drama value is very big, but from a practical point of view, we've been saying for quite a while that the devil is in the details. That in the detail level, we need to put in a lot of hours and look into a different aspect of it from a working level, not just big, kind of big deal, kind of big boss kind of deal standpoint.
Right, they felt the pressure and they needed to produce results, but perhaps there was some kinks during the preparation stages.
I think that you can call it a kinks, but another standpoint is that the main point of this big deal is still a question mark, which is whether North Korea is really willing to go through the denuclearization. I think there is a suspicion all along, I think it's pretty prevalent in the U.S., that North Korea thinks that having a nuke till the end is their key to survival. So they'll never give up the denuclearization. And from that standpoint, North Korea is doing everything to keep their nukes on their possession. And they're using this salami strategy, which is to divide all the process into smaller details to make incremental changes. But from the Donald Trump's point of view, I think he's expecting a wholesale change, shocking news value. That's what he needs at this point, and that's what he's striving for.
Is there a lack of understanding of where each side is coming from for the U.S. and North Korea?
Well, it is true that it's a lack of understanding, but it's a lack of trust to begin with. Remember, we had this kind of discussions with the North Korea 20 years ago in 1994. We had probably made the bigger progress on the paper at least, but that fell through. And the brinkmanship continued afterwards, and here we are. So that the fundamental trust level is lacking. So you cannot really blame the U.S. side to be suspicious of North Korea's intentions and their actions because they've seen it and they've gone through it before. So at this point, no matter how much Donald Trump says he's in love and the relationship is good, I think that his aides and the general public's eye at this point is very suspicious.
So working level talks, working from the bottom up instead of top down would be a very feasible option for the future dialogues. But it seems difficult to establish that with North Korea, with their unique system where they have to report everything to the top.
Right. So we go into this kind of a circle where it's the details what is needed, but that detail has to do with the fundamental question of whether North Korea is willing to give up the nuke or not. I think that this is where President Moon could possibly come in, because part of the question of whether they will give up the nuke or not is because even if we have a big deal and very secure nuclear regime at this point, we don't know how long it will last. Donald Trump will cycle out of his presidency. President Moon will potentially go out, and without having successor coming in that are favorable to the North Korea and this deal. So probably only one, if nothing drastic happens, will remaining at the top would be Kim Jong-un. And he has to worry about whether he will go down the route of Gaddafi or Iran or Pakistan at this point. So he wants to have some concrete regime and assurance at this point. And his assurance probably is to keep the nukes. But if he were to give it up, probably from the economic point of view and the policies in international law, the solid agreement has to be airtight before he would, make a big decision that, okay, this is really time to give up the nuke, and in return, we'll take the prosperity, we'll take being a productive member of the international community, because the U.S. is committed and the South Korea is committed, and China is backing all the deal. So in order to get there, it's not just a matter of North Korea or the U.S. I think the South Korea can play still a big role to get those things together and hold it tight, because no matter what other people say, it's not the game of big countries alone. This is happening in the Korean Peninsula, and the South Korea should be in the driver's seat.
Well, if you talk about track records, Donald Trump has a tendency to pull out of deals more so than making new deals. Does it affect North Korea's level of distrust towards the Trump administration?
Well, I kind of doubt that. I think that both sides have been playing this deal-making game. And the methodologies that both sides have used is whether it be a real estate deal kind of mode from a Trump or the brinkmanship from the Kim Jong-un, is that they are always willing to at least show that they're willing to walk away. And that has been a kind of mode of operation from the Donald Trump side. We saw that in Singapore, which almost did not happen, and then he walked back in. And Kim Jong-un as well, his rhetorics also towards that direction. But at the same time, if you look at the languages of both sides, they are willing to talk, which indicates that this is a bigger, still part of the deal-making process. Now, another important thing about North Korea is that in order to walk away from this deal or be in a stronger position, they need an alternative. And that always has been China. So I think the next move that we'd like to see is whether the Kim Jong-un visits China and kind of go through the communication process and making the relationship stronger, so that whatever the next move in the deal-making process comes, the North Korea can probably stand firm. That's what they would want. But of course, what complicates things is that China is in the trade talks with the U.S. So this is kind of a chess game with multidimensional degrees.
Many pieces at play.
Many pieces at this point.
Compare for me, if you will, the reaction from home for the U.S. because of the outcome and the reaction at home from North Korea because of the outcome of the summit.
Right,
probably. The drastically different contrasting responses, the repercussions.
Different circumstances, I guess. From Kim Jong-un's point of view, he has made announcements to his people that this is going on. They had the news broadcasts go out to their public, unlike the previous times where this was shrouded in the secrecy. So he has to deliver some message. I think that today's summit with Vietnam probably will be kind of a package that we went down and met with the Vietnamese leader and also Donald Trump without mentioning or minimizing the impact of deal breaking down. So that's how he will manage it. I think the Donald Trump side, he has been under criticism about fruitless the negotiation with North Korea for quite a while. So at this point, he will go back and proudly say that, yeah, I'm willing to walk away. I'll take the better deal next time. And what's the phrasing? I'll walk away rather than giving it away, or it's better to have a better deal than, having a poor deal at this point. So he also has something to say.
Both sides have a wise way of spinning words or phrasing things after the results. Going back to the press conference of North Korea, which was a surprise in many ways, how do you rate the fact that they actually decided to go out and speak? Is it more about trying to portray their side of the story or to express their dissatisfaction with the outcome of the summit?
Well, I think that content-wise, probably they would like to be on the better side of the public opinions. I think they tried that. I don't know how successful they were. But I think from the largest perspective, I think this is part of their charm offensive and trying to appear that they are normal, that they do what the other leaders do. They come out and they answer questions and try to communicate with the larger community and the global society. So, of course, the Kim Jong-un succeeded in doing that in a major part by just sitting down with Donald Trump, the President of the United States. I think that his charm offensive to the world, to his partners and opponents have gone on for quite a while. And I think this is new North Korea, trying to portray themselves as the part of the global society. I think that message, on one part threatening everybody, but at the same time having a good face, probably that's the strategy that they've been employing, and probably with some effectiveness.
Must be a more effective way to show a contrasting image, especially with someone who's larger than life, who likes to shoot and then aim and talk about it like Donald Trump.
Right. In that way, probably they share some similarities. But at the same time, I think that those, because of that precarious characters that both have and unconventional nature, probably they're keenly aware of it, and they know the potentials of doing something unconventional and not being subject to the public scrutiny as others might be. So in that sense, they're freer to make things happen, but at the same time, that increases the uncertainties and circumstances. So the risk is both ways.
So it's go big or go home. Quite volatile individuals that are meeting and holding discussions. Donald Trump's press conference also quite interesting in the fact that he showed somewhat of a different style. He seemed more diplomatic than usual.
Right. At this point, his big concern is that he's the one who's walking away at this point. So if this turns the other side off completely, then he would have failed. So I think that at the same time, his the praising of Kim Jong-un and He said at one point he fell in love with Kim Jong-un and he's his friend and so on and so forth. That indicates that he wants to hold on to this process, hold on to the thread of negotiation further. And it just indicates that this is his tactic to show his strong side and his willingness to walk away and bargain for the tougher deal. And that is very consistent with his method of deal making. Those people who read his book would identify, oh, this is a chapter 3 move or a chapter 5 move. So in that sense, that story is going on, and that's why the positive side still is, comes to the fore, that this is whatever the skipping and hurdles, it is all in the process.
But it will be interesting to find out from your perspective, is it working to the rest of the world that's watching from the outside in?
Well, I think it's working in one regard, which is we don't know how it will resolve, whether North Korea will really make a determination to give it up. But if you notice, the real issues that have been circulating or percolating so far has been clearer and clearer and clearer. From the get-go, we had this suspicion that denuclearization has different meanings to Kim Jong-un and to Donald Trump and U.S. side. And U.S. side pushed for CVID at first. But now it has come to a point where they can point to several factors, whether it would be dismantling certain facilities, inventories, stockpiles, and the labs, what we're going to do. I think that kind of details is a progress because several months ago, we only had this big mushy question of whether North Korea will, take the position this way or that way. So in that sense, the point, what's on the table is clearer, but of course, that clear issue is still one of the fundamental questions.
Right. China and Japan, they are involved in some sense, or they want to get more involved or want to step aside from this topic or issue. How is the dynamic changing after the summit outcome has been revealed?
Well, China would be more of a heavyweight at this point because the breakdown of the deal means that North Korea will look for some friends to back them up in their fight in this negotiation. That's why Kim Jong-un might visit Xi Jinping and have a strategy session of sort. In that sense, I think that China will continue to be important and probably more important going forward, what kind of role they play in the negotiation process. Japan, on the other hand, is always in the background because that's part of the Pacific alliances with the U.S. So in that sense, how the North Korea positions in terms of security issues probably that'll affect Japan, and Japan's cooperation with the U.S. and also Korea will be kind of a key to make one part of the equation very secure, which is that the one equation always has been the security and the umbrella that the U.S. provides for this region. And if that's pretty secure, probably North Korea can back down from their demand that the U.S. has to pull out from this region completely.
And President Moon Jae-in's role here, it feels like his shoulders might be feeling a little bit heavier because perhaps it would be wiser to go on a three-way talk direction from here on instead of just setting the tone and stepping aside for Washington, Pyongyang-Washington to sit down and talk for their third round of talks.
Right. Because of the personalities playing these unconventional games, there has to be an adult in the room to say that, come on, you don't want to veer too astray from the course. I think that stabilizing force or stabilizing factor that President Moon Jae-in can provide. But at the same time, I think the role is a little bit bigger because it's not just the North Korea and the U.S., and also not just the the short distance of the future to talk about the economic sanctions and what we can do. The vision has to be longer term. The vision has to be about how prosperity could come to North Korea in economic sense, and that economic prosperity could replace their way of surviving and way of giving the rationale for their existence and the regime, right? So in that sense, South Korea's role is very important economically and politically and diplomatically, and that can only come from somebody who's favorable to this process and somebody who can commit to this process. And from the President Moon Jae-in's point of view, because of the domestic issues, I think this is an opportunity, but very necessary portions. Because of the economic situation in South Korea, North Korea could present a very big opportunity in the future, not only the short distance, but the long-term future. So in that sense, if the North Korea deal or the peace regime, including the economic regime, can pan out well, then it could save his presidency. It could save, not that his presidency is in great peril at this point, but it can make his legacy in a future posterity. So I think that President Moon is dreaming big and has dreamt big. And in order to make that dream a reality, this deal between the North Korea and the U.S. and South Korea included should come to fruition. And he cannot just sit idly to look at it because, as you can see, the deals break down without his help. Deals break down because those two personalities can always do things unconventionally. So I think that President Moon's role in stabilizing force and also vision provider is still there.
His presence and necessity is highlighted during his absence and when things broke down recently. Well, thank you so much for your insights, Professor Song Se-ryeon. We appreciate you coming in and sharing your views on this summit outcome with us.
Thank you.